Monday, May 5th, 2025. Welcome back to Hang Up and Listen, the sports podcast here at Slate. Holding it down for you again this week, my name is Alex Kirshner. I'm a contributing writer for Slate, and I also co-host Split Zone Duo, a national college football podcast. We will usher in a fresh month of podcasting for you with a great show. We'll talk about the ouster of the Los Angeles Lakers from the NBA playoffs and some other NBA exits, both on the playoff and head coach retirement fronts. We will discuss Bill Belichick's embarrassing spring, which has very much become the problem of the University of North Carolina before he has even coached a game there. And we'll check in on the Kentucky Derby, wherein sovereignty beat journalism in a metaphor for our times on Saturday. But the big story of the day was a guy in a suit who was finally allowed back into Churchill Downs after a 3-year suspension. As usual, joining me this week is Lindsay Gibbs, the publisher of Power Plays, a newsletter that covers the biggest stories of the moment in women's sports. Lindsay, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm a little worried about my doll collection these days. A lot of talk about dolls in the news. And so I wasn't expecting this, Alex. I'm going to be honest.
You may just have to make do with 2 rather than 30. And of course, we've got Ben Lindbergh with us. Ben is a senior editor for The Ringer, and he co-hosts Effectively Wild, a baseball podcast that is in full swing right now. Though I guess, Ben, it never really leaves full swing.
It's true. Even when the players stop swinging, we do not. Year-round podcast. But yes, nice to be here. We're not talking about how I am. I'm here to promote my book, not to discuss my personal life.
No, there will be no baseball talk this week on Hang Up and Listen. And to the extent that I have any power to prevent baseball talk of any kind from coming into my life for the next several weeks or even months, who knows? I may just exercise that power, but it's not personal. Before we get into our business, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making this show possible. Subscribing helps us make the show. It allows you to get it ad-free, an excellent perk not available to most, and you also get bonus segments, and there is good news. We have one of those that is live for Slate Plus members right now. We're going to talk about 2 all-time Game 7s in the Stanley Cup playoffs, just hours apart, really, and the fascinating question of where we all go from here. You can hear it right now as long as you are a Slate Plus member. You can subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking Try Free at the top of the Hang Up and Listen show page, or you can visit slate.com/hangupplus to get access to those wherever you listen to podcasts. A lot happened in the NBA last week and even last night as we record this on a Monday morning. Lindsay, sometimes we just have to give in to our base desires and talk about the topics du jour, the things that are being talked about on TVs and gyms and haircutteries across the country. For one thing, the Minnesota Timberwolves really did a number on the Los Angeles Lakers to the point that some fairly serious people, or at least prominent ex-players like Paul Pierce, are suggesting that the Lakers should seek to move on from LeBron James. Others are speculating that JJ Redick is not long for the job of Lakers head coach. I'm giving in here and just asking you the question, who is longer for sunny Southern California, LeBron or his former podcast co-host turned head coach?
I feel like I have a really invested interest in podcaster success, you know? So I want to see this guy who came up on the mic, you know, who just wanted to start his own podcast. He just wanted a place to talk about his love for the game. And he worked his way. He toiled in obscurity.
He woke up every morning with his pickaxe and shovel, and he went down into the podcast mines, and he hammered away.
He dealt with, janky microphones. I bet once he had a recording fail, he thought he had that interview in the can. And then he pressed play on the audio on the way back, and it wasn't there. That's suffering, my friend. You don't know. You don't know.
Doesn't get worse than that. Game 7 loss, Game 5 loss, can't compare to losing podcast content.
Truly. So I want to see this guy who's been on this side of things really make it. No, here's the thing. I cannot really get behind any of these hot takes about LeBron leaving or JJ being done after 1 year, because when Luka came into the picture here in Los Angeles, pretty much everyone agreed that this wasn't for this season, that they would need another season or two to really put these pieces together. They finished the season strong. LeBron and Luka are a tantalizing duo. So we all got a little ahead of the game, I think, as we're all want to do. And I will include myself in the royal we. But ultimately, this was always almost the best case scenario for how this season could go for the Lakers. They just were not a very good team overall. I do have to say, I think the best meme, though, was that LeBron now has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. And it was a Photoshop version of LeBron in a Mavericks jersey reunited with AD and Kyrie. So I think that's officially what I'm rooting for, because that would be the trolliest option ever. And I think sports media might explode, which would also be entertaining.
Yeah, we talk so much about LeBron's age and him being 40. We never talk about the fact that JJ Redick is 42. He's even older than LeBron. His days are numbered. I guess this tells you a little bit about the career and aging curves of coaches and podcasters versus players. LeBron is ageless, immortal, eternal, and JJ is just embarking on his coaching career. I do think that some of the responses to the Lakers' exit here are overblown, and granted, they did not cover themselves in glory here. There was a time when it looked like everything was clicking and that they were just going to soar, and we talked about them on this very podcast when things were going great for them, and then things went less well, and Redick himself didn't handle it as well as he could. Of course, he kind of fumed at reporters, despite being a former media member himself. Media member solidarity. Come on, JJ. But he sort of stormed out of a press conference when he was questioned about his decidedly unorthodox approach to using the same 5 players for an entire half of Game 4, which was the first time that had happened in a playoff game as far back as the substitution tracking goes. So it was an unusual way to respond to the situation. But on the other hand, it was clear that they just weren't quite clicking. You had a first-year coach. You had the team basically being rebuilt on the fly or not being completely rebuilt. They were sort of in the process of rebuilding it. That rescinded trade for Mark Williams looms large because the Lakers did not loom large in this series. And that was sort of the problem, that they were just smaller. And as much as we talk about small ball in basketball or spacing, sometimes it really does come down to just who has the bigger guys, whose guys are closer to the rim. And Jaden McDaniels of the Wolves, 6'9", said, I just noticed at certain times when they had no rim protector in the game, when Jackson Hayes wasn't on the court, if he's not on the court, I'm basically the tallest person out there. So I don't think anyone could rim protect me. And the Lakers said it. They just couldn't get rebounds. So I don't think this is a time when you want to blow everything up. I think this is a time when you want to put the finishing touches on this roster with these superstars that you have, one younger, one older. And I think they could still make that work. You just got to work on the chemistry and also get that guy who could kind of pair with Luka to be the big.
I'm always interested in the way that big city media outlets respond to sort of a shocking, or not even shocking in this case, but surprising playoff ouster, particularly in the NBA. I'll group Boston in there because of the Celtics culture and history, but the way that Knicks fans, Knicks media respond when the Knicks are disappointing, and the way that Lakers fans, Lakers media tend to respond when the Lakers are disappointing. And I think something that is interesting about the Lakers compared to those other teams is that a lot of people in Los Angeles, where I live now, tend to just see it as the Lakers' birthright to be much better than this, basically no matter what is happening in the background of the franchise. And I think this is a situation where that is really stark. You don't see that a ton with the Knicks because, spoiler alert, the Knicks over the last couple of decades have not won a lot of playoff series. So you have, a general, this franchise should be more respectable sort of air about them, Lindsay. But I think there's just sort of a misalignment of what the people who care most about the Lakers think the Lakers should be and what is possible for pretty much any NBA team to be within like 3 months of their championship core or their hopeful championship core coming together. Like, it just takes some time for things to work the way that they're supposed to work. And maybe the Lakers don't have time because LeBron James is nearing AARP eligibility. But I think that there's really something to it that breaking up this band before you've gotten to see them have a full training camp and a full regular season together to work out the kinks just seems to me like it would be incredibly silly.
Yeah, it's very obvious what this team needs. Rim protection, rim protection, rim protection. Get Luka a lob threat. Let's face it, Luka does need to improve his fitness. That's always true to really take things to the next level. Not to be Nico Harrison about it. They need more relief, offensive relief. They need more scorers out there as well. And they need to shore up defense. They need to shore up around the edges. You don't blow it up. I do have to say, so much of coaching in the NBA is ego management. And when it gets to be problematic is when the coach's ego then really gets involved. I think what you saw in Denver recently with Malone's ouster was all of the postmortems of that showed how much Michael Malone's ego was clashing with Calvin Booth's ego and was taking space and air and sucking air out of the rest of the team, right? There was no space to manage the egos on the team when the coaches' egos were so big. The way JJ acted like a petulant child with the media and kind of stormed out of that pre-game presser when he was questioned about his decision-making. He's not the first coach to storm out, but there is a sense of, I'm the smartest person in this room. How dare anyone question me? And while coaches are crazy competitive, and we will talk about a coach in a minute who is, known for their surliness and competitiveness and contentious relationship with the media, you have to have a little bit more depth to it than that. And Duke JJ was back in full force, and that's not where you want to be going.
Ben, LeBron is not the only all-time player whose future with his team is at least the point of some debate, if not some speculation after these playoffs. The Milwaukee Bucks looked absolutely awful in getting themselves bounced out of the first round of the NBA playoffs. And John Hollinger of The Athletic, one of the most respected writers in basketball circles in this country, has a story out in the wake of the Pacers getting dumped out of the playoffs by the Bucks that suggests that the Bucks are toast and trading Giannis Antetokounmpo may be the only path forward. Do you see another path forward?
I think there is a path, which is keep running it back with Giannis, keep making it to the playoffs potentially, but probably not going deep into them. And in general, I'm kind of okay with the idea of keeping your superstar, even if it means that your championship aspirations are not what you would want. There's a real value, I think, in that kind of continuity in keeping a franchise star. And yes, I did wonder, Lindsay, whether Nico was seeing Luka hurt his back in Game 5 and Redick saying we need to get in championship shape and saying vindication, but probably not. I don't know that anyone else was feeling that way. But with Giannis, even if your team isn't great, there's something to be said for just having this generational superstar who is entertaining you with his brilliant play day in and day out. However, I think basketball is unusual. It's unlike other sports in that all it takes is one superstar to just drag you to the playoffs. But I think it's different from other sports in the sense that just getting to the playoffs doesn't really allow you to dream. Whereas in hockey and baseball, it's like, well, just get in and then anything can happen. In basketball, you actually have to have a good team. And with some exceptions, unless LeBron is dragging you single-handedly to the finals, you really do have to actually have a supporting cast. And the Bucks don't. And there doesn't seem to be any outlook that they will anytime soon. And Giannis he's been pretty open about the fact that he wants to win that second ring. And after Lillard's injury and what that does to his trade value, just being out presumably for next season, given the fact that they don't have a single first round pick for the next several years, they can't really improve any trade that they would be trying to make. So it's hard to envision that they could turn things around while still having him. And of course, he can opt out after 2027. And so if you're going to deal him, you want to do that before he's entering his final year. So I hate to say it because I don't want it always to be about championships. And hey, if we can't be the best team, then we might as well just blow it up and start over. But this is, I think, a case where after they blow the 7-point lead in the last 40 seconds, and it's just hard to imagine things getting better during his tenure, that I think you can make a strong case, as Hollinger did, for dealing him.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I do not want to see Giannis leave Milwaukee. I love what he has built there, and he has won a championship, which does take some of the pressure off of this decision. But ultimately, I think what you see with the Bucks organization is just how many things need to go right to keep a team at the top of the NBA. It's not just getting lucky with getting your MVP and getting your generational superstar. It's building around it. You need injury luck to work out. Chris Middleton went downward. I still don't like the way they dealt him to the Wizards. For Kuzma, that didn't work out. They took a big swing with the Damian Lillard thing. It didn't work out. Dame got injured. They never really found the chemistry. And then, of course, this devastating injury at the end of this season in these playoffs. He's going to be out all next year. But I don't think that was a bad decision. They missed on pretty much every single draft pick the past few years. Nothing has panned out. I mean, look at it, Denver with the Christian Brown. He was a late first round pick in the draft. He's been instrumental in getting that team and getting them to win this playoff series, getting them to the championship. You need so many things to work out. The Bucks got lucky. They made a lot of good decisions. The Drew Holiday trade worked out for them. They got the championship. And then things kind of fell apart. I do think if they want to win immediately, trading Giannis is the best solution. But I don't think it's the only solution. Or I don't think it's the only path forward, I think is the best way to put it. You can keep Giannis. You can try to build up around the edges. You can position yourself, know that you're not going to be a contender for a few years with Giannis, but see what can come around those edges. See if you can get better at these draft picks. See how you can shore things up. It's not going to be easy, though. There's no fun way forward.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's going to be top 5 MVP voting for the 7th consecutive season. It's going to be his 7th straight All-NBA first team. Not many players have accomplished this, so he could go down as one of the best players ever, even if he had the lone ring. And yet, clearly, it's a priority for him. He's said as much. I'm trying to win a second ring. Me not having a second championship, I look back at my career and everybody can say he had an incredible career, first ballot Hall of Famer, whatever. But me, my personal goal, if I'm not able to help my team win a second ring, I'm letting down myself. And it's the rings only mentality that I kind of bemoan in sports. And yet I understand why he would have that priority as a player, because that's how he'll be perceived and that's how people will talk about him. And it does come down to championships. And that's often what settles the greatest of all time debates, which I guess could be a segue to another guy who won a lot of championships.
It could be. So a lot of teams got bounced from the playoffs. I think it is fair to say that the biggest outpouring of love really is the word. The biggest outpouring of love and the biggest discussion point of any one person's departure during these playoffs has been on the coaching side. Greg Popovich had been the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs since 1996. He won 5 championships there, 3-time coach of the year. He has a decorated resume, including a gold medal in the Olympics, coaching the national team for the United States. And he also suffered a stroke last fall and was not with the team full-time in his usual capacity for basically this entire season. Lindsay, Popovich has announced that he is retiring from coaching and stepping back to become the team president of the Spurs. I'm sure they're happy to have him and that they don't yet have to contemplate sort of an existence without him altogether. But how does it land with you that this extremely successful coach, who also has been just a major cultural figure in sports for a lot of reasons, including his press conferences and his irascibility, but his supposed friendliness underneath, according to people who know him. How does it land with you that he is stepping back?
I'm devastated, absolutely devastated. I think it's the right decision, health first, and I want Pop to be around for a long time. I want him to get to enjoy the fruits of his labor, as one might say. But I'm sad we don't get to see him really coach Wemby up and see these playoff series and see his relationship with Wemby develop. I'm sad that we're losing his voice in press conferences regularly. He's a progressive voice. He speaks out for the marginalized and for common sense and for progressive values in general. He's never been afraid to take a stand. And that's something that is sorely missing. And I think even in today's NBA, we're seeing less and less of it. I think, though, this archetype of a coach, it's such an unhealthy profession. There's an unhealthy level of obsession you need to have in order to succeed at it. There's a perspective that is automatically lost with being that focused on winning, with being that successful, and with being that surrounded by and engulfed by people doing things for you, and a world where the only thing matters is a game. It's hard to imagine having any real perspective when that is your life. And yet everything we read about Pop shows that somehow he did. I mean, I think the stories going around about how he supported DeMar DeRozan when DeRozan's father passed away, just going to his hotel room and sitting with him and crying and embracing him for hours. We need more people like that in the sport, in the world in general. And we need more examples of powerful men, powerful white men, providing that level of empathy, that level of emotion, and that level of care and compassion. And the NBA world, we are all at a loss for not having that as a constant presence. But we have all gained so much from having that in our lives and in our culture and in our society.
Yeah, and I do hope that he is able to make a full recovery, not just for himself and the sake of his family, but also that he can continue to be around basketball. It's not as if being a president of basketball operations is an easy job.
No.
That doesn't take a lot of your time and energy. But of course, just the continuity of having him there, it really is like the number of eras that he spanned and the number of reinventions that he was able to orchestrate. Because, of course, like any great coach has to have the talent, and he inherited David Robinson, and then Duncan comes along. And so things kind of went his way in terms of just the talent, you know, the lottery balls just falling the right way, and then Wemby coming along. But he really did kind of remake the model of those teams along the way, where initially with Robinson, with Duncan, the Twin Towers defense, he was just, you know, known for the great defenses of those teams, some of the best of all time, but then was able to reshape and adapt and become a great scoring team as well when the defense sort of slipped. And just the selfless play, which can kind of be a cliche, and just the idea that you should subsume your own individual identity in favor of the team's. He actually was able to do that. And again, he had to have the players who had the skill sets and the mentality to do that. But I think a lot of that was him instilling that mentality and just having this really selfless play where they would share possession, and it was sort of a whole greater than the sum of its parts situation year in and year out as the personnel, as the cast changed, so that it became clear that the one unifying force was Pop, and the Spurs hope will continue to be.
If you're a fan of a sports team, you hope that your team winds up with a coach who will be a true player developer.
Yeah.
Because it's cool to say things like Manu Ginobili was the 57th overall pick in the second round of his draft year, or that Tony Parker was the 28th overall pick right at the end of the first round, or even that Kawhi Leonard was a late lottery pick, 15th overall in his draft year in 2011. It's cool to like envision that you'll have a guy who will do that. Pop did it again and again across eras over multiple decades of finding these guys and building different championship cores with them as part of it. And I think the other thing that he did that's really impressive is the way that he found where people fit. Like Ginobili was famously a sixth man for a lot of his career and one of the greats of all time to do it. Bruce Bowen is a name that I remember from my childhood because he played a different position slightly, but he was sort of Draymond Green before Draymond Green. Like this guy who was regarded on championship teams for years and years and years as just an incredible defensive stopper who was deployed perfectly in the system that he was in. And I think it's really striking that Popovich was able to get guys like this, find key pieces in places where others would not find them, and then develop them into, if not stars, crucial supporting pieces to stars in the 90s. in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and again and again and again.
Just a note as we wrap up, as we're talking about game sevens, and we've talked about Los Angeles, we're talking about legacies. Just important to note that James Harden once again disappeared in a game seven. The Clippers, probably apt that they aren't getting any attention from us. And we talked about the other Los Angeles team, even though they played in a game seven in much recent days. But wow, that Clippers third quarter, I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time.
Yeah, and Warriors game seven too. We're just lousy with game sevens here. In our bonus segment, we're going to be talking about hockey game sevens. So you like game sevens, and who doesn't? Sports delivering right now.
You know who does love game sevens? Buddy Hield.
We bid a fond farewell to the Houston Rockets and to their former star, James Harden, who is, Lindsay, I hate to say it, but I mean, sports needs losers sometimes. You can't have winners without losers. And I think James Harden can be safely shuffled into that latter group. Someone who wasn't a loser for his long career, but maybe dabbling with it now, will be the subject of our next segment. Bill Belichick doesn't want to talk too much about his relationship, but we do, because it's become a massive problem for North Carolina Tar Heel football. As we progress through the season, every fan knows that big wins are hard to come by and tough losses are even harder to accept. But do you know what isn't hard to accept? Discover. Believe it or not, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard that right. 99%. So make a good call for your wallet and get Discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Hiring shouldn't be a hassle or a drain on your budget. And Upwork is your one-stop shop to find, hire, and pay top freelance talent, saving you time and keeping costs in check. Companies at every stage turn to Upwork to get things done and find more flexibility in the way they staff key projects and initiatives. Upwork's global marketplace is filled with top talent in IT, web dev, AI, design, admin support, marketing, and a lot more. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. With no cost to join, you can register, browse freelancer profiles, get help drafting a job post, or even book a consultation. From there, you can connect with freelancers and easily hire them. Upwork makes the entire process simpler and more affordable with industry-low fees. Post a job today and hire tomorrow with Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com.
Sir, this order will make it socially acceptable for a man in his 70s to date a 24-year-old.
That's right. We're calling it the Belichick Law. We're going to make girlfriends young again, okay? Old men can now date far younger women. We like that. It's hot. But in reverse, it's quite disgusting, right? Very Dateline, you know?
Last winter, North Carolina hired Bill Belichick, who was out of the NFL for an entire year and still had no options to return as a head coach, to lead the Tar Heels program in the ACC instead. It was curious for all of the reasons we discussed on Hang Up at the time, most prominently Belichick's lack of college experience, his lack of any close connection to the UNC program, his lack of relevance or common experience with today's young people, and the likelihood that if things went well, he'd bolt for the NFL at the soonest opportunity. Other than that, we thought it was great and sensible. But it's become a full-on disaster before a game has even been played. The 73-year-old Belichick's relationship with his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, has become a national fascination, as you just heard on Saturday Night Live last weekend. Hudson has become a key mover and shaker inside the UNC football program, despite being totally unqualified to have really anything to do with the managerial decisions behind a major college football program. Belichick has her copied on certain emails, like the ones that deal with the branding and PR initiatives of the head coach, The Athletic has reported. The man himself has said that he has both a personal and professional relationship with Hudson. She has seemingly sidelined UNC's paid public relations staff for football, who did not accompany Belichick to a book tour interview with CBS This Morning that aired about a week ago, that the now infamous soundbite came from, in which Hudson overruled the interviewer and said, "We're not talking about that." When he asked how Hudson and Belichick met, only Hudson showed up with the coach, and you can see how well she handled the task of managing one of the world's most famous football coaches. Lindsay, as we've talked about on the show before, you are a North Carolina Tar Heels fan. Is this thing as over as it appears before Bill Belichick even coaches a game for this program? I think it's completely kaput.
I don't think it's over. UNC will hang on for dear life for as long as they can squeeze, I think, a little bit of notoriety out of this. I don't think they're going to call kaput on this before the first season on their end. The other end, I could see that, but I don't know. It is bizarre. This whole thing has just reached Twilight Zone levels of, are you kidding me? That CBS News segment, first of all, he's wearing like the tattered Navy sweatshirt, and she is wearing a Navy sweatshirt in the corner as she is staring daggers at this interview. And look, you know that CBS produced that segment pointing out how much Jordan interfered with that interview lightly.
Unless she's doing it a lot.
Right.
And really aggravating them.
That's the thing. Like, it's not just that one time that they showed that she did that and they were like, that's it. This was rude. You know, she had been pestering them nonstop in the lead up to this. During it, there were reports that she was really late to the actual interview. Delays. She is 24 years old. This has reached the point that after that CBS interview aired, UNC released an official statement from Belichick. This was on the UNC website, on UNC letterhead, addressing Jordan's interference in this interview and, having Belichick say, Jordan, who I have a personal and professional relationship with. She signs her emails, the chief operating officer of Belichick Productions, a production company that nobody can really find proof of existence. This whole thing, it's so much. It's very entertaining and it's very sad. And I hate it and I love it.
Yeah, this was CBS News Sunday Morning, not TMZ. This is not what you would expect to go viral in this way.
And not 60 Minutes either. It's
right.
Not, no disrespect, but this is not like investigative journalism most of the time.
No.
Right.
Yeah. And so it is very funny that this is the way it happened and perhaps meaningful. I do think that as entertained and fascinated by this as I am as well, I think a significant percentage of the interest in this story is just the purient fascination with the age-old story, speaking literally almost, just the, tale as old as time of a May, December, April, November relationship, especially with someone like Belichick, who we just haven't seen much of his personality until recent years. He was famously, kind of curmudgeonly. And so for him to be on InstaFace, as he used to say, which in this interview, he seemed to say that he has basically no control over or access to or interest in, which I guess isn't that surprising. But it's been kind of clear, when he joined Instagram, okay, this is probably not his decision, or at least it's not something that he decided, yeah, let's do this. He went along with it. I think, look, there's the aspect of this kind of vaguely embarrassing for both of them, as in any of these sort of situations. I think there's even potentially some ageism in there, maybe on both ends. I mean, especially the idea that he's addled or being manipulated or something along those lines. I don't know that we've seen enough to conclude that. I think he may just be a willing participant. And how many times have we seen the old guy breaks up and starts dating the young woman, and maybe he knows what goes along with that and he's entirely into it. But there could also be some sexism involved, just because, the whole idea of the sort of social climber and she's using him and the gold digger stereotype. That said, I think that this has, as you said in your intro, Alex, kind of crossed over into this is the sort of distraction, at the very least, that Belichick was always adamant about avoiding when he was with the Patriots, and do your job being his catchphrase. And he even sort of invoked that in the UNC statement where he said that Jordan was just doing her job. And if she was, then she was not doing a very good job.
Yeah.
Because if her purpose is to be his PR person, I guess unless you want to say that they're trying to sell books here, so what better way to do that than to just drum up a lot of interest? But I don't think most people who are fascinated by this story are going and picking up the book. I think that we're all just, our tongues are wagging about this. And so if the idea is to keep the negative headlines away, then that is exactly the opposite of what has happened here.
If I were North Carolina, I would try to fire him for cause right now and get a settlement done and not have to pay him the tens of millions that you might have to pay if you fire him at the end of this football season when things have gone badly and he doesn't just leave for an NFL offer. I think this is a complete disaster for North Carolina. And Ben, I agree with everything you say about his relationship, and it's not really my circus, not my monkeys, you know, who is manipulating who, if anyone is, and how should Bill Belichick be spending his time, or how did Jordan Hudson get all of that real estate that's been reported in the tabloids over the last couple of weeks, millions of dollars of real estate that she's accrued. Not my issue. I think the issue is that this has become what North Carolina football is about. You know, I cover college football for a living. When you are the head coach of a college football program, whether it is Alabama or Kennesaw State or anyone in between, your job in life and the thing that the money is for, about $10 million this year for Bill Belichick, what it's for, is to put your entire self into improving both the perception and performance from that of a college football program. And Belichick has allowed this to happen, not just by being clumsy, but by over blurring the lines between his personal life and his professional life. He's on Saturday Night Live being talked about. He showed up to this interview in a Navy football sweatshirt, doing nothing whatsoever to promote that he's now the head football coach at North Carolina, except where it's asked about, selling books, doing this for himself, and doing it without any seeming professional help or guidance or guardrails, frankly, from people at North Carolina. And he allows this to become a massive mess. I think it's what he's going to be known for in the industry for a while, especially among players and recruits who were little kids or not even born when Bill Belichick was doing the best of his achievements as the New England Patriots head coach. Like, the entire value prop of Belichick in North Carolina is this guy's such a powerful brand that he's going to elevate North Carolina. And that brand is over, man. Like, I mean, he's still a great all-time NFL coach, but I think this thing's cooked. I think he's completely blown it before he even starts a game, and I'd be somewhat surprised if he even lasts 2 years in that job. Other than that, though, again, I think it's great, Lindsay.
It's going great. It's going great. I just like this relationship. It's been on my radar as being something more dramatic than your typical, old guy just dating the hot younger woman relationship for a while. Their first kind of coming out party last summer, when TMZ was writing about it, the way it was written was just so bizarre. I went back and looked at this TMZ article from last June, which goes into how they met, which was, of course, the controversial question that CBS dared ask. Once again, this was already public knowledge, saying Hudson first met the 72-year-old on a flight from the Boston area bound for Florida way back in 2021, meaning she was 20 or 21 at the time. They bonded over a philosophy project the student athlete had been working on. We're told they swapped contact information after landing and stayed friendly, discussing her schoolwork and the X's and O's of her cheerleading routine. Apparently, even though he was dating someone else at the time, she was quietly supporting him at his games throughout the 22 and 23 seasons. And then in the TMZ article from 11 months ago, we're told Hudson, an entrepreneur and philosopher, which I must say is how she identifies herself on her Instagram, has even begun helping Belichick with his business endeavors. So there were some red flags from the beginning. Those are not the type of articles that are typically written about these relationships. And I just want to say neither one of these people are victims here, but this whole thing is sketchy. I agree, Alex, this could end it all before it begins, but I don't think UNC is going to let that happen.
Me neither.
I think their egos will try and keep this thing going.
Yeah, and when he said in his statement she was not deflecting any specific question or topic, I mean, that kind of contradicts what we saw and heard, right? You'd have to believe that this video was doctored. Granted, we didn't see the entire video. If Trump is going to keep interceding to sue CBS and force full unedited tapes to be released, I wish he would do it with this interview so that we could all indulge our fascination as opposed to others. But it seems to me that a large part of this also is sort of the schadenfreude of, hey, this is this guy who has shut down any media inquiries and just hasn't played ball with the press his whole career. And we've never really seen this side of him. He maybe hasn't had this side of him before. And so it just goes against type in a way that I think makes us all just want to pry. But we don't have to pry that much because it's really all out there in the surface. And I think Charlotte Wilder put it, Hudson is like the Elon Musk of college football. You know, he's just kind of like unelected, unhired, and yet has inserted herself into these proceedings in a very disruptive way. And so that's ultimately why we're even talking about this in contradiction of Jordan's wishes on a Slate Sports podcast. Yeah, it's the gossipy angle and the tabloid stuff, but really, it's also the football. And so I'd be very interested in hearing what people at the football program, what kids in that program, what the parents of those kids make of this, and whether they think, we just wanted our kids to play under this legendary coach so that they could then graduate to the NFL. And now this guy seems to be consumed promoting his own projects and also delegating a lot of responsibility to his girlfriend, who we did not figure was going to be a big player here and doesn't seem to have the qualifications to be.
Go Heels. Things are great. Up next, the 151st Kentucky Derby was only sort of about the horses.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American Innovation.
Journalism and sovereignty, nose to nose, down to the last 16th of a mile. Sovereignty has taken the lead. Journalism is second toward the inside. Baeza is third, but it will be sovereignty to rule the Kentucky Derby. Journalism and Baeza were next. Final Gambit was fourth. The final time was 2:02.31 seconds.
The Kentucky Derby was Saturday, and the favorite, Journalism, did not win. The next favorite, Sovereignty, at 5-1, did, in a pretty fun race that saw the favored Journalism make a late charge and come up just short. The year's biggest story at the Derby, though, I don't think was the horses. Nobody was a huge favorite, so there wasn't a ton of Triple Crown buzz coming into the race. But this year marked the return of Bob Baffert, the famous and very successful horse trainer, who was suspended from entering horses the past 3 years after an investigation into a litany of horse training no-goes, doping primarily with his Derby-winning horse Medina Spirit, but also endangering his horses, at least 75 of whom have died in Baffert's care, according to data from the California Horse Racing Board. He had a horse in the race this weekend, Baffert did, as he finally returned, but he didn't win. Ben, do you feel bad for Bob Baffert, who has been very clear that cancel culture got him, and he was finally allowed back into the race?
I wouldn't say I feel bad for him. I do feel conflicted about how bad I think he is. On the one hand, a lot of horses in his charge have died, and a lot of cases of legal substances showing up on race days in ways that weren't legal, that's happened too. And so maybe where there's smoke, there's fire applies here. On the other hand, CNN reporter Katie Bo-Lillis has a new book out called Death of a Racehorse, which is partly about Baffert. And she reported that Churchill Downs hired a private intelligence company called 5 Stones to investigate Baffert. She wrote at CNN, 5 Stones ultimately appeared to find no credible evidence that Baffert used any performance enhancers on his horses. According to my sources, the track ended the contract after only a few months of effort by the private eyes. She also wrote this, in more than 2 years of reporting, I too was unable to identify any information to suggest that Baffert, despite a record of positive tests for therapeutics, dopes his horses. A close examination of available records shows that when it comes to drug violations, Baffert's record is basically in line with several other top trainers in the sport, trainers who don't draw the same national attention. So I guess we could have led this segment with an SNL clip, too, from a Weekend Update segment that suggested that he gives his horses steroids. But there's no evidence of that. So there is some distinction between the illegal use of therapeutics and juicing, as we would say, with a non-horse. So I don't know. I think most people who watch the Derby, like me, don't pay much attention to horse racing at other times of year. So we know this quotable guy with the white hair and the purple sunglasses whose horses have won as many derbies as anyone else's. And he's the subject of a lot of controversy, partly because he's not from horse racing old money. He's been successful. He isn't really shy about hiding from the mics and the spotlight. So I guess he's kind of brought it on himself to some extent. He's irreverent, he's abrasive, he's outspoken. And so he's sort of the face of a sport that seems inhumane if you don't love the actual racing. Like, I care more about horses not dying than I do about races being run. So I feel worse for the horses than for Baffert. What do you think, Lindsay?
Yeah, I have a lot of conflicting emotions about this, too. I got really into the pageantry this year. My family threw a Kentucky Derby baby shower for my cousin and his wife. And, you know, we got really into the pageantry and the costumes and the bourbon of it all. And I was like, well, is this okay to be doing when this sport is so controversial on its own? But I did have a lot of fun, and I don't feel outraged that Baffert is allowed back. The suspension was the suspension, but it seems like even now, like today, if they found the same, he had the same positive test that happened that got him suspended, by today's rules, a few years later, it would only be a fine. It wouldn't even be a suspension. So it's just hard to get that worked up about for me.
Yeah, I don't think any of this is a morality play. On that front, I do want to congratulate the ruler of Dubai, who owned the winning horse Sovereignty that came on here. But in all seriousness, it was really cool, the scene with Bill Mott, the trainer who won this Derby. You could sort of see the relief in his face as well as the joy as Sovereignty crossed the post first, because this guy, Bill Mott, has a Kentucky Derby championship on his resume. He won in 2019, but I think everyone agrees, and he kind of probably knows in his heart of hearts as well, that there's a pretty massive asterisk on this one, because this was the year that the winner was disqualified after the finish, after a delay, and they said that the second place horse, which was his horse, Country Horse, was the Derby champion. And so you get to be the Derby champion, but let's be honest, like when all the Derby championship trainers take a picture together, like they probably put you on the end if that's how you won your only Kentucky Derby. But now Bill Mott has a no doubt about it, fully earned, fully above board, straight up, won the race, Kentucky Derby champion. And you could see the way that he reacted in the stands at Churchill Downs. I thought it was a cool scene.
Yeah. And it was an exciting race, and credit to Sovereignty and his rider and trainer and this horse loves the slop. I guess it's in his bloodlines. His father was a mutta. His mother was a mutta. I don't know whether that's actually true, but he did well in mud. So I enjoyed the 2 minutes that I pay attention to horse racing much of the time until the next 2-minute race. But I guess I would say that, even the agency now that oversees testing for horses, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, they've come out and sort of defended Baffert and said that he's been squeaky clean since the suspension and drawn this distinction between doping and medication overage. And I guess I'd say credit to the sport, credit to Churchill Downs for holding him accountable and sticking to their guns on that, even though he fought it, as he often does, because Baffert's been good for business. He gets casuals interested, and of course we're always interested in someone who's a good quote, and someone who's been one of the best of all time, and who delivered multiple Triple Crowns after an extremely long drought. And you also saw that one of his horses was disqualified not long before the race. There was some soreness, and so they decided to sit him. And I think we've seen just how bad it is for the brand, basically, of horse racing when something happens to a horse. And that's a big part of the reason why they went after him so hard and why it became such of a scandal. And so
yeah,
I guess it's good that that has put pressure on him specifically and the sport more generally to avoid that tragic moment of seeing this celebration and this great race and this event, and then suddenly a horse having to be put down in the middle of that. So to the extent that he has contributed to greater scrutiny on conditions and safety, I think that's a benefit.
It's okay to listen to your body and to do what's best for you.
A couple more things I thought were kind of interesting. Well, that might be the wrong way to frame this, but anyways, there were record ratings, kind of. This was the highest viewed Kentucky Derby since 1989. Early numbers show 17.7 million viewers, which would be the best since ABC drew 18.5 million for Sunday Silences win 36 years ago. Of course, this does benefit from the things that we were discussing on last week's episode about how numbers are calculated today. There have been some updates that better include streaming and crowds. But still, I think it shows that the Derby still is kind of a central figure in our sporting landscape, despite how little most of us know about it, horse racing in general. But also, like, how disappointing were the headlines that this race gave us? Sovereignty defeats journalism. It was bleak, my friends, to the point where Hegseth was tweeting, "Sovereignty over journalism on the track and in 2025 America."
Yeah.
And Stephen Miller tweeted or X'd, "In the Trump administration, sovereignty will always win." It's bleak.
Yeah. The tough thing is that for these guys, that's like a top 5% joke they've ever told.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the funniest things Pete Hegseth's ever said. And it's not even any funnier than what thousands of people were tweeting at the same time. But hey, Pete, good job. I hope that he was not enjoying any mint juleps during this race. So I hope that that was honored and that the Secretary of Defense came to that of completely sober mind, as he promised all of us he would during his confirmation hearings. That is all for this episode. We also have a special bonus show that is in the podcast feeds right now for our treasured subscribers at Slate Plus. It's about an incredible pair of Game 7s over the last couple of days in hockey. The Dallas Stars coming back to beat the Colorado Avalanche, and the very next day, the Winnipeg Jets coming back to beat the St. Louis Blues from multiple goals down in the final minutes. To hear that, you can subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangup plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available right now, and we will see you there. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. And don't forget to follow the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Our producer this week is Alyssa Jong Perry. For Ben Lindbergh and Lindsay Gibbs, I'm Alex Kirshner. Remember Zelma Beatty, and thanks for listening. As we progress through the season, every fan knows that big wins are hard to come by and tough losses are even harder to accept. But do you know what isn't hard to accept? Discover. Believe it or not, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard that right, 99%. So make a good call for your wallet and get Discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard.